My name is Chapman Walker, and at 34 years old, I never expected my own mother to ban me from our family vacation. Growing up, Villa 7 at Sunset Palms Resort was our sanctuary, the one place where we felt like a real family. 25 years of memories shattered with a single text message. You are not allowed at our vacation home this year. What my family never understood was that I stopped seeking their approval the day I received that message. They had no idea what I was capable of. If you are enjoying this story so far, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit the like button and subscribe to hear what happened next. I was born and raised in Boston, the youngest of 3 children in what most would consider an upper-middle-class family. My father, Richard Walker, built his career in finance, climbing the corporate ladder at one of the city's most prestigious investment firms. My mother, Diane, was a tenured professor of economics at a well-respected university. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect American family, but appearances can be deceiving. My brother Andrew, 6 years my senior, was groomed from birth to follow in my father's footsteps. By 40, he had already secured a partnership at a competing firm, married a socialite, and produced 2 perfectly behaved children who attended the right private schools. My sister Samantha, 3 years older than me, took a different but equally impressive path, becoming an orthopedic surgeon at Massachusetts General Hospital. Both of them excelled in ways that made my parents beam with pride at dinner parties and family gatherings. Then there was me, Chapman, the different one. While my siblings were joining debate teams and studying for advanced placement exams, I was building computers in our basement and coding my first programs by age 12. School bored me. The structured environment and rote memorization felt like a prison sentence. I maintained decent grades, enough to avoid serious parental intervention, but I never shined in the ways that mattered to my family. The only time I felt truly connected to them was during our annual 2-week stay at Sunset Palms Resort in Florida. My parents had been vacationing there since before I was born, always staying in Villa 7, a spacious beachfront property with 3 bedrooms and a private pool. My earliest memories are of those golden days at the resort, learning to swim in that pool with my father holding me up, his rare smile warming me more than the Florida sun. "Keep kicking, Chapman," he would say, his hands steady beneath me. "You are almost there." Those words became fewer and farther between as I grew older, but at Sunset Palms, we had moments that felt genuine. Fishing off the resort pier with my dad at dawn, watching the sun paint the sky in impossible colors. My mother teaching me to play chess on the villa patio, her competitive nature softening just enough to let me win occasionally. Even my siblings seemed kinder there, building sandcastles with me and showing me how to spot dolphins from the shore. Villa 7 became our special place, a sanctuary where the Walker family could pretend we were normal, that we valued each other beyond achievements and accolades. For 25 years, that tradition remained unbroken. Through high school graduations, college acceptances, first jobs, and promotions, we always returned to Villa 7. The problems began when I decided to drop out of college during my junior year. I had been attending MIT, studying computer science more to please my parents than out of any genuine interest in academia. The curriculum moved too slowly, covering concepts I had taught myself years earlier. Meanwhile, the tech world was evolving at lightning speed, and I had an idea that couldn't wait for a diploma to validate it. "This is the most irresponsible decision you have ever made," my father declared when I told them over Sunday dinner. "No Walker has ever failed to complete their education." My mother simply stared at her plate, as if unable to look at me. "We did not raise you to be a quitter, Chapman." Andrew, ever the golden child, shook his head with an expression that mixed pity and contempt. "The job market will eat you alive without credentials. You are throwing away your future." Only Samantha showed a glimmer of understanding, though even she urged me to finish my degree before pursuing my startup dreams. None of them understood the urgency I felt, the conviction that this was my path. By dessert, the temperature in the room had dropped to Arctic levels, and I left knowing something fundamental had changed in our relationship. That year, for the first time, I missed the family vacation at Sunset Palms. My fledgling company demanded every waking hour, and my parents made it clear that my choice had consequences. Villa 7 is for family members who support each other's success, my mother said coldly. When you are ready to take your future seriously, you will be welcome again. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was building something more important than sandcastles and sunset walks. But at night, alone in my tiny apartment, I would sometimes dream of the sound of waves breaking on the shore outside Villa 7, and wake with an ache in my chest that no amount of coding could fill. The first 3 years after leaving college were the hardest of my life. My social media analytics platform, EngageTrack, existed primarily in my head and in thousands of lines of code on my laptop. I rented the cheapest apartment I could find in Cambridge, a studio so small I could touch opposite walls by stretching out my arms. My diet consisted almost exclusively of ramen noodles, coffee, and whatever free food I could scavenge from tech meetups around the city. 18-hour workdays became my normal routine. I would wake before dawn, code until my eyes burned, then crash for a few hours before starting again. Friends stopped calling after months of declined invitations. Dating became a distant memory. My world narrowed to the glow of my computer screen and the relentless drive to prove myself. The rejections piled up faster than my dirty laundry. 57 investor meetings resulted in 57 variations of no. Some were polite, citing market concerns or unproven business models. Others were brutal, questioning everything from my technology to my leadership abilities. Come back when you have a real team, one venture capitalist told me, barely glancing at my presentation before showing me the door. This is a solution looking for a problem, another said dismissively. After each rejection, I would return to my apartment, allow myself exactly 1 hour to feel the crushing disappointment, then get back to work, refining, improving, refusing to quit. During those years, I missed 3 more family vacations at Sunset Palms. My parents interpreted my absence as rebellion rather than necessity. Phone calls home became increasingly strained, with my father asking pointed questions about my income and my mother making thinly veiled suggestions about graduate school applications. Andrew just made junior partner, she would say, and Samantha is being considered for chief resident next year. The subtext was always clear. While my siblings continued to ascend, I was floundering, a disappointment to the Walker name. The fact that I was working harder than I ever had in my life meant nothing without the traditional markers of success they valued. My breakthrough came in the 4th year, when a mid-size marketing firm agreed to beta test EngageTrack. Their results exceeded even my optimistic projections, with client engagement increasing 30% in the first month alone. Word spread quickly through the industry, and suddenly the investors who wouldn't return my calls were reaching out, asking for meetings. I secured my first round of funding, a modest sum by Silicon Valley standards, but enough to rent a proper office and hire 3 employees. For the first time since starting this journey, I allowed myself to believe that success might actually be within reach. That summer, I decided to attend the family vacation, arriving at Villa 7 with expensive gifts and a newfound confidence. I brought my father a rare scotch, my mother a designer handbag, Andrew a set of premium golf clubs, and Samantha a weekend spa package. Material offerings that I hoped might bridge the gap that had grown between us. The reception was cordial but cold. They accepted my gifts with appropriate thanks, but conversation over dinner remained focused on Andrew's recent promotion and Samantha's research publication. When I tried to explain my business in terms they might appreciate, my father interrupted. "Chapman still thinks he can take shortcuts to success," he said to Andrew, as if I weren't sitting right there. "Some lessons have to be learned the hard way." Andrew nodded sagely. "The tech bubble is due for another burst anyway. Better to have something solid to fall back on when these startup fantasies inevitably crash." Later that night, as we sat on the villa patio, Andrew cornered me while the others were inside. "You know, little brother, there is still time to salvage your career. I could put in a word at the firm, get you started in an entry-level position." With the Walker name, you could still make something of yourself. His condescension burned worse than the rejection letters. This was the pattern of our family dynamic, established so long ago that none of them seemed aware of it anymore. My achievements would always be diminished, my path deemed less worthy, my potential viewed through the narrow lens of their expectations. Still, a part of me held on to hope. I kept a picture from that trip on my desk, the four of us standing on the beach at sunset, my smile a bit too eager, too hungry for their approval. I told myself that when EngageTrack really took off, when I had undeniable proof of my success, things would change. They would finally see me. 5 years after launching EngageTrack, everything changed almost overnight. Our user base had been growing steadily, attracting attention from larger tech companies looking to expand their analytics offerings. When Datasphere, one of the biggest names in the industry, approached me about a potential acquisition, I almost deleted the email thinking it was spam. 3 meetings and 1 comprehensive due diligence process later, I was staring at an offer sheet with a number so large it seemed unreal. Datasphere wanted to purchase EngageTrack for $87 million, with a provision for me to stay on as division head with a generous compensation package. After signing the preliminary agreement, I sat alone in my office until dawn, watching the Boston skyline transition from darkness to first light. All those years of work, of doubt, of ramen noodles and rejection letters had led to this moment. I had done it, and on my own terms. The validation I had sought for so long was finally in my grasp. My first thought was to share the news with my family. Despite everything, I wanted them to know, to finally understand that my path, though different from theirs, had merit. The annual family vacation at Sunset Palms was scheduled to begin the following week. Rather than calling ahead, I decided to surprise them, to walk into Villa 7 with the acquisition papers and finally see pride in their eyes. I booked a flight to Florida, reserved a rental car, and even ordered a custom bottle of champagne to mark the occasion. The night before my departure, as I was packing my suitcase, my phone buzzed with a text message from my mother. "Chapman, we feel it would be best if you did not join us at Villa 7 this year. Space is limited, and Andrew is bringing his new girlfriend Jessica, whom we are eager to get to know better. Perhaps next year." I read the message 3 times, convinced I had misunderstood. Space was limited. Villa 7 had 3 bedrooms, the same as always. I had stayed there with my family dozens of times, including when both Andrew and Samantha brought significant others. There had always been room before. I called my mother immediately, but the call went to voicemail. I tried my father with the same result. Finally, I called Samantha, who at least had the decency to answer. "I am sorry, Chapman," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Dad thinks it would be too crowded this year, and honestly, these vacations are always tense when you are here. You and Andrew always end up arguing, and Mom gets upset. So I am being uninvited from our family vacation, the one we have been taking for 25 years. Her sigh carried years of complicated family dynamics. "It is just one summer. Give it some time, let things settle. You will be welcome next year, I am sure." Stunned, I hung up without saying goodbye. I poured myself a drink and opened Instagram, where I immediately regretted what I found. My mother had already posted photos from their first day at Sunset Palms. There they were, my parents, Andrew, Samantha, and a woman I assumed was Jessica, all smiling on the familiar patio of Villa 7. The caption read, "Annual family tradition with our favorite people in our favorite place." Our favorite people. And I had been explicitly excluded. As I scrolled through more photos, my phone buzzed again. A text from Andrew. "Heard Mom told you about this year's arrangement. Maybe next summer, if you are still in business by then. Jessica fits in perfectly here, by the way. Dad already loves her." The casual cruelty of his message confirmed what I had suspected all along. This wasn't about space limitations. They simply preferred to vacation without me, the family disappointment, the one who had chosen a different path. I looked at the acquisition papers sitting on my coffee table, the validation I had worked so hard to achieve, and realized a painful truth. No amount of success would ever change how they saw me. I had been measuring myself against a standard that kept shifting, chasing approval from people who had decided long ago that I would never quite measure up. That night, alone in my penthouse with a view most people would envy, I felt more isolated than I had in my tiny studio apartment during those early struggling years. The family that should have been closest to me had pushed me away at the very moment I had something meaningful to share. Villa 7, once a symbol of connection and belonging, had become just another door closed in my face. For 3 days after receiving that text message, I barely left my penthouse. I alternated between rage, hurt, and a deep, hollow sadness that no amount of financial success could fill. The Datasphere acquisition papers remained unsigned on my coffee table, my moment of triumph overshadowed by personal rejection. On the 4th day, I forced myself to attend my regular therapy session with Dr. Levine, a habit I had started 2 years earlier when the pressure of running a growing company began affecting my health. I hadn't planned to discuss my family situation, preferring to focus on business stress, but somehow the whole story spilled out within minutes of sitting down. "It sounds like you have been seeking validation from people who are fundamentally unable to give it to you," Dr. Levine observed after listening to my account. "Not because of any failing on your part, but because their view of success and worthiness is too narrow to accommodate your path." "They are my family," I said, as if that explained and excused everything. "Family should be where we feel most accepted, but unfortunately that is not always the reality," she replied. "The question is, why do you continue to measure your worth by their standards when you have clearly created your own successful path?" Her words hit me with unexpected force. For years, I had been trying to translate my success into terms my family would understand and appreciate. I had been converting my accomplishments into their currency, hoping for an exchange rate that would finally purchase their approval. "What would it look like," Dr. Levine asked, "if you stopped seeking their validation entirely? If you defined success solely on your own terms?" I left that session with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The path forward wasn't about making my family understand my choices or recognize my achievements. It was about fully embracing the life I had built, independent of their judgment. The very next day, fate intervened in a way I could never have anticipated. While reviewing potential investment opportunities with my financial advisor, she mentioned in passing that a luxury resort property in Florida had recently been listed for sale due to financial difficulties. "Which resort?" I asked, my interest piqued. "Sunset Palms. Beautiful property, but the management has been lacking, and they have lost ground to newer resorts in the area. The current owners are motivated to sell quickly." I felt a strange sensation, like standing at the edge of a high dive, both terrified and exhilarated by the possibility before me. "Send me everything you have on it," I said. The information arrived within hours. Sunset Palms Resort, including all 30 villas, the main building, restaurant, pools, and beachfront property, was indeed for sale at a price that, while substantial, was well within my means following the Datasphere acquisition. The resort had been profitable for decades, but had suffered in recent years due to outdated facilities and management disputes among the current owners. I spent the next 2 days researching everything about the resort business, real estate values in the area, and potential for revitalization. I had never considered property investment before, but the more I learned, the more I recognized a genuine opportunity beyond my personal connection to the place. Still, I questioned my motives. Was this a sound business decision, or was I contemplating an $80 million act of petty revenge? I needed to know more, to see the property through new eyes before making a decision. I flew to Florida under the guise of a potential investor, careful to schedule my visit during a time I knew my family would be out on a deep-sea fishing excursion. The resort manager, unaware of my history with the place, gave me a comprehensive tour. Walking the familiar grounds, I saw Sunset Palms with fresh perspective. The bones of the place were solid, the location unbeatable, but years of minimal investment showed in faded furnishings and outdated technologies. The staff, many of whom had worked there for decades, showed remarkable dedication despite the uncertainty of the pending sale. "What happens to the employees if the resort changes hands?" I asked the manager. "That is the biggest concern for everyone," he admitted. "Some potential buyers have indicated they might close for a complete renovation, which would leave 68 people without work for months, maybe longer. Others might bring in their own management team." I spoke with several longtime staff members, people who had greeted my family year after year, but would have no reason to remember me specifically. Their love for Sunset Palms was evident, as was their anxiety about the future. Maria, the housekeeping supervisor who had been there for 27 years, spoke of the resort with tears in her eyes. "This place is like family to us. We just want someone who will care for it the way we do." By the time I left, my decision was made, but not for the reasons I had initially imagined. Yes, there was a certain poetic justice in the idea of owning the place from which I had been excluded. But more importantly, I recognized a genuine opportunity to preserve something special while transforming it into something even better. This wasn't just about my family anymore. It was about creating something meaningful on my own terms. That evening, in my hotel room overlooking the same ocean I had watched from Villa 7 for so many years, I called my financial team and gave them the go-ahead to begin acquisition proceedings. "I want to move quickly," I instructed, "and I want the transaction handled through a holding company. My name should not appear on any public documents until the deal is complete." For the first time since receiving my mother's text, I felt something other than hurt and anger. I felt purposeful, energized, and oddly free, as if in deciding to purchase Sunset Palms, I had also bought my own liberation from a lifetime of seeking approval I would never receive. The process of acquiring Sunset Palms moved with surprising speed. I established a shell company, Atlantic Horizon Investments, to handle the transaction, ensuring my name would not appear in any public records until the deal was finalized. My team of attorneys, financial advisors, and real estate experts worked around the clock to conduct due diligence, negotiate terms, and prepare the necessary documentation. The current owners, a group of investors who had purchased the resort 15 years earlier, were indeed motivated to sell quickly. Their partnership had fractured over disagreements about necessary upgrades and investment, leaving the resort in a state of limbo that had affected both maintenance and bookings. When my team presented a clean, all-cash offer with minimal contingencies, they accepted within days. Throughout the negotiation process, I focused on the business aspects of the acquisition rather than my personal history with the property. I analyzed financial statements, occupancy rates, staffing models, and maintenance records. I commissioned independent inspections of all structures and systems. I researched competitive properties in the region and identified specific opportunities for improvement. This methodical approach served two purposes. It ensured I was making a sound investment, and it kept me from dwelling on the emotional aspects of purchasing a place that had been both paradise and pain for me. The final negotiations took place in a conference room in Miami, far from the resort itself. As the sellers and their representatives signed the last documents, one of them remarked, "Your client is getting a gem here. Sunset Palms just needs some polishing to shine again." "My client understands the potential," my attorney replied, "and has the resources to realize it." With those signatures, ownership of Sunset Palms Resort transferred to Atlantic Horizon Investments, with me as the sole beneficial owner. The sellers departed, and I was left with my core team to discuss next steps. "Congratulations, Mr. Walker," my project manager said. "What would you like to address first?" I had already developed a comprehensive plan for revitalizing the resort, but there were immediate priorities related to my family situation. First, I want a complete upgrade of the security system, including new digital access cards for all villas. The current reservation system needs to be replaced immediately as well. "That can be expedited," she assured me. "What about staffing changes?" "I want to retain all current employees," I said firmly. "Offer them all positions with a 10% raise across the board. For now, we will need an interim manager who understands the situation." I had already identified and recruited James Harrington, an experienced resort manager with an excellent reputation for both guest relations and staff development. "And Villa 7?" my assistant asked, knowing its significance. I paused, considering. "Mark it as permanently reserved for owner use only. Redirect any current reservations to upgraded accommodations in other villas, with appropriate compensation for the inconvenience." Within 48 hours of closing the deal, my team had implemented the first phase of changes. New security protocols were in place. Staff had been informed of the ownership change and reassured about their positions, and James had taken the reins as interim manager with clear instructions about handling my family's upcoming visit. "The Walker family has been coming here for 25 years, I told him during our private meeting. They are currently staying in Villa 7 and are unaware of the ownership change. Their reservation extends through the end of next week." James, a consummate professional, merely nodded. "How would you like us to proceed with them specifically?" "Their current access cards will stop working tomorrow morning. When they contact the front desk, inform them that Villa 7 is now reserved exclusively for the owner. Offer them alternative accommodations in Villa 12, which I want upgraded to premium status immediately, or a full refund if they prefer to leave. And if they ask about the new owner, tell them the resort was acquired by Atlantic Horizon Investments. No further details at this time." "Understood," James said. "And when do you plan to reveal yourself as the owner?" I considered the question carefully. "I will arrive the day after tomorrow. By then, they will have had time to adjust to the initial change." As my team implemented these immediate changes, I focused on the broader revitalization plan for the resort. I authorized a comprehensive renovation schedule for all villas except number 7, updated landscaping throughout the property, and a complete overhaul of the restaurant and recreational facilities. These changes would take months to complete, but the planning began immediately. Throughout this flurry of activity, I experienced conflicting emotions. Part of me felt a sense of justice, even triumph, at the thought of my family's reaction to being displaced from their precious Villa 7. Another part questioned whether I was allowing hurt feelings to drive business decisions. Was I being petty? Perhaps, but I was also making necessary changes to a property that had stagnated under its previous ownership. The night before my planned arrival at the resort, I sat in my hotel room in Miami, staring at the signed acquisition documents. Tomorrow would bring a confrontation I had both dreaded and anticipated. Whatever happened, there would be no going back to the way things had been. For better or worse, I had changed the dynamic permanently. "This is not just about them anymore," I reminded myself. "This is about building something new, something mine." With that thought, I finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, dreaming of ocean waves and closed doors suddenly opening. The call came precisely as predicted. At 8:17 a.m., James phoned to inform me that my family had attempted to access Villa 7 and found their key cards deactivated. "Your father is currently at the front desk," James reported. "He is quite insistent about the situation being resolved immediately." "Is he raising his voice?" I asked, knowing my father's tendency to intimidate service workers when frustrated. "Let us just say he is making his displeasure known to everyone in the lobby," James replied diplomatically. "I am about to speak with him personally." "Perfect. Follow the plan exactly as we discussed. I will arrive in 3 hours." I had arranged for a helicopter to transport me from Miami to the resort's seldom-used helipad, partly for efficiency, but mostly for the entrance it would afford me. Childish, perhaps, but after years of being made to feel small by my family, I allowed myself this one theatrical gesture. From the helicopter, I watched Sunset Palms come into view, its white buildings gleaming against the turquoise ocean. Villa 7 was easily identifiable from the air, situated on a prime corner of the property with the best views and most privacy. For the first time, I saw it not as an unattainable family sanctuary, but as a piece of real estate that I now owned. The helicopter touched down precisely at 11:30 a.m. James was waiting to greet me, his professional demeanor masking whatever chaos had ensued that morning. "How did they take the news?" I asked as we walked toward the main building. "About as expected," James replied. "Your father demanded to speak to the owner. Your mother mentioned their long-standing history with the resort. Your brother suggested legal action might be forthcoming. And did they accept the alternative accommodation?" "Reluctantly. They are currently situated in Villa 12, though they made it clear they consider it temporary until the misunderstanding is resolved." We entered the main building through a side entrance, avoiding the lobby where guests might be checking in. James had arranged for us to use a private conference room, where I could review some operational details before the inevitable confrontation. I had just begun examining the staffing schedules when the door burst open without a knock. My father stood in the doorway, his face flushed with anger, my mother and brother visible behind him. Samantha was noticeably absent. "There you are," my father boomed, addressing James. "Your staff said the new owner was arriving today. We demand to speak with them immediately about this outrageous situation." James looked at me, waiting for my cue. I nodded slightly and stood. "That would be me," I said quietly. The silence that followed was absolute. My father's mouth opened and closed without producing sound. My mother's hand flew to her throat in a gesture of shock I had never seen from her before. Andrew, ever the quickest to recover, narrowed his eyes in calculation. "Chapman," my mother finally managed. "What is this about?" "This," I gestured around us, "is about business. Sunset Palms was for sale, and I purchased it. A straightforward transaction." My father found his voice at last. "This is absurd. You bought an entire resort just to—" "What?" "Kick us out of our vacation home." "Villa 7 was never your home," I corrected him. "It was a villa you rented annually, a rental that is no longer available as it is now reserved for owner use only. However, as James should have informed you, Villa 12 has been completely upgraded and is available for your use for the remainder of your stay, at no charge." Andrew stepped forward, his attorney persona taking over. "This is clearly a vindictive action taken in response to a personal family matter. Such behavior could be construed as harassment." I met his gaze evenly. "Nothing vindictive about it. Sunset Palms represented an excellent investment opportunity at an attractive price point. The previous owners had neglected necessary upgrades, resulting in declining occupancy rates. I plan to reverse that trend with significant capital improvements. As for Villa 7, as the owner, I have every right to reserve certain accommodations for personal use." "You expect us to believe this is just business?" My mother's voice was quiet but intense. "After what happened—" "What happened," I replied, "was that I was explicitly uninvited from a family tradition that meant a great deal to me, ostensibly because there wasn't enough room, despite Villa 7 having accommodated all of us plus guests many times before. That hurt, yes. But this acquisition is about creating something new, not clinging to something I was told I no longer had a place in." My father, never one for emotional discussions, returned to practical matters. "How could you possibly afford to buy this entire resort? Your little tech project couldn't have generated that kind of capital." The dismissive way he referred to my company, even now, was so typical that I almost laughed. My little tech project was acquired by Datasphere for $87 million. I had planned to share that news with you during our family vacation, but since I was uninvited, I found another use for my new resources. The shock on their faces at the mention of the acquisition price gave me a brief moment of satisfaction, quickly followed by sadness. Why had it always been like this? Why had it always been so important to prove myself to people who seemed determined not to see me? The tense standoff was interrupted by the arrival of Samantha, who slipped into the room with an apologetic glance at everyone. "Sorry I am late. I was on the phone with the hospital." Her eyes widened as she took in the scene. "Chapman, what are you doing here?" Before I could answer, Andrew interjected. "Our brother has apparently bought the entire resort out of spite, just to ruin our vacation. Samantha looked at me, really looked at me, in a way the others never did. Is that true? I bought the resort because it was a good investment, I said. The timing was coincidental, though I won't pretend I didn't see the irony in the situation. So what now? She asked. Are you throwing us out? Not at all. As I explained, Villa 12 is available for your use for the remainder of your stay. It has been completely updated with new furnishings, electronics, and amenities. The only difference is the location and the number on the door. My father made a dismissive gesture. This is ridiculous. We have been coming to Villa 7 for 25 years. You can't just upend a family tradition because of a perceived slight. It wasn't perceived, I said quietly but firmly. I was explicitly told I wasn't welcome. Now I am simply exercising my rights as the property owner to determine how the villas are allocated. You are still welcome at Sunset Palms, just not in Villa 7. My mother, always the most practical member of the family, seemed to be processing the new reality. So our options are to move to Villa 12 or leave altogether. Yes, I confirmed. If you choose to leave, you will receive a full refund for your booking. If you stay, you'll find Villa 12 exceeds Villa 7 in every respect except location and familiarity. Andrew was still seething. This is beyond childish, Chapman. Using your money to get revenge over a simple scheduling issue. I turned to him, finally allowing some of my frustration to show. Was it just a scheduling issue when you texted to mock me, suggesting I might not even be in business by next summer? Was it just logistics when all of you posed for family photos at your favorite place with your favorite people while explicitly excluding me? This isn't about a villa, Andrew. It's about years of being treated as less than, of having my choices and accomplishments dismissed. For once, my brother had no ready response. My mother looked away, unable to meet my eyes, while my father maintained his stony expression. It was Samantha who broke the uncomfortable silence. I think we should stay, she said, addressing our parents. Villa 12 sounds lovely, and this is still our family vacation. We can adjust to a different villa. My father looked like he wanted to argue, but my mother placed a restraining hand on his arm. Samantha is right. We are here now, and changing accommodations is a small matter in the grand scheme of things. Andrew wasn't ready to concede. This isn't over, Chapman. You can't buy your way into or out of family relationships. No, I agreed, you can't. That is perhaps the most important lesson I have learned recently. I turned to James. Please ensure the Walker family has everything they need in Villa 12. Any requests they have should be given priority. With that, I excused myself, leaving them to adjust to the new reality. As I walked away, I heard Samantha hurrying to catch up with me. Chapman, wait, she called. I paused, allowing her to reach me. This is quite a statement you have made, she said, her tone neither accusatory nor approving. It wasn't meant as a statement, I replied. At least not entirely. She studied my face. Congratulations on the Datasphere acquisition. That is incredible news. I wish you had told us sooner. I tried, I reminded her. I was told not to come. She had the grace to look embarrassed. I should have pushed back harder on that decision. I am sorry. It was the first genuine apology I had received from any family member in years. Thank you, I said simply. So what happens now? She asked. With the resort with Villa 7 with us. I considered her question carefully. The resort will undergo significant renovations to restore it to its former glory and beyond. Villa 7 will remain private. As for us, that depends on whether anything has actually changed, or if we are just in different rooms having the same old conversations. She nodded thoughtfully. Fair enough. For what it is worth, I would like things to change. As she walked away to rejoin the others, I wondered if that change was actually possible, or if some family dynamics were simply too entrenched to evolve. Only time would tell. The next few days at Sunset Palms unfolded in a strange parallel reality. My family continued their vacation in Villa 12, while I established myself in Villa 7 and threw myself into resort operations. We existed in the same space but separate orbits, occasionally crossing paths in the restaurant or on the beach, exchanging awkward greetings but little else. I chose to focus on the business rather than the family drama. I met with department heads, reviewed operational procedures, and began implementing the first phase of my revitalization plan. The staff, initially wary of another ownership change, gradually warmed to me as they realized I valued their expertise and had no plans for mass layoffs or radical concept changes. The heart of Sunset Palms has always been its people, I told them during an all-staff meeting. My goal is to provide you with the resources and support to deliver the exceptional experience our guests have come to expect, while improving the facilities to match your level of service. 3 days into this new arrangement, Samantha sought me out as I was reviewing renovation plans for the main pool area. Unlike our parents and Andrew, who seemed to be avoiding me entirely, she made a genuine effort to bridge the divide. "Impressive plans," she commented, looking over my shoulder at the architectural renderings. "The infinity edge is a nice touch." "Thanks," I replied, somewhat surprised by her interest. The original pool was state-of-the-art when it was built, but that was 20 years ago. "It is time for an upgrade." She settled into the chair beside me, her expression thoughtful. "I keep thinking about what you said, about whether anything has actually changed, or if we are just in different rooms having the same conversations." I set aside the plans, giving her my full attention. "And what do you think?" "I think," she said slowly, "that I have been complicit in a family dynamic that has hurt you for years. It was easier to go along with Mom and Dad's narrative about your choices than to challenge their narrow definition of success." Her candor caught me off guard. Of all my family members, Samantha had always been the most supportive, or at least the least dismissive, but she had never directly acknowledged the underlying issues before. "Why now?" I asked. "What changed?" She gestured around us. "This, obviously. The fact that you built something successful enough to purchase an entire resort. But also," she hesitated, "seeing how little your absence affected Mom and Dad. They just carried on as if nothing was missing. It made me realize how unfair we have all been." Her words hurt, but they also carried a ring of truth that was somehow validating. "I spent years trying to translate my success into terms they would understand and value," I admitted. "It never worked. Because nothing would have been enough," she said. "Not because of any failing on your part, but because they decided long ago what success should look like, and anything else threatens their worldview." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of years of family dynamics hanging between us. "I would like to try again," she finally said. "Not to force a big family reconciliation, but just you and me, rebuilding our relationship as adults on new terms." It was the first step toward something that felt like genuine family connection, one based on mutual respect rather than conformity to expectations. "I would like that," I said. Over the following days, while my parents and Andrew maintained a polite distance, Samantha and I began reconnecting. We shared meals, walked on the beach, and talked more openly than we had in years. She told me about her frustrations with hospital politics and her doubts about her chosen specialty. I shared the struggles and triumphs of building EngageTrack, stories I had never felt comfortable telling my family before. A week after my arrival, as my family's vacation was coming to an end, I received a surprise visit from my father in Villa 7. He stood awkwardly in the living room, looking around at the space that had been his for so many years. "You have changed things," he observed, noting the new furniture and technology I had installed. "Yes," I said simply. "The villa needed updating." He nodded, clearly uncomfortable but determined to say whatever he had come to say. "Your mother and I have been discussing the situation. We want you to know that despite our differences, you are still our son, and we would like to maintain a relationship." It wasn't an apology, but from my father, it was as close as I was likely to get. I appreciate that, I said. But any relationship going forward needs to be based on mutual respect, not just shared DNA. He frowned slightly. We have always respected you, Chapman. No, I corrected him gently. You have always expected me to conform to your idea of who I should be. That is not the same as respect. He seemed about to argue, then thought better of it. Perhaps we all have some adjusting to do, he conceded. Your success with this acquisition has certainly demonstrated your business acumen. It was telling that even now, he could only acknowledge my worth in terms of financial achievement, but it was something. A small crack in a lifetime of rigid expectations. Villa 12 has worked out well for your stay, I asked, changing the subject. Yes, quite comfortable, he admitted. Though it will take some getting used to, after all these years in 7. Change can be difficult, I said, the understatement hanging between us. Before departing the next morning, my mother sought me out as well, her approach more emotional than my father's pragmatic one. I wish you had told us about the Datasphere acquisition, she said. We would have been proud. I resisted the urge to remind her that I had tried to tell them, that they had explicitly prevented me from sharing my news. Instead, I simply said, I am proud of what I built regardless of who knows about it. She reached out as if to touch my arm, then hesitated. Will you come for Christmas this year? It was an olive branch of sorts, though not one that addressed any of the underlying issues. Let us see, I replied, neither committing nor refusing. Andrew, predictably, remained distant and somewhat hostile until the end, making a point of telling me that he was already looking into other exclusive resorts for next year's family vacation. Somewhere more suitable for our traditions, as he put it. I wished him well in his search, refusing to be baited into another confrontation. His opinion no longer carried the weight it once had. After my family departed, I threw myself into transforming Sunset Palms. Over the next 6 months, we renovated all guest accommodations, updated the restaurants, expanded the spa facilities, and enhanced the beachfront experience. I established a scholarship program for employees' children and created a partnership with the local community college to provide hospitality training and job opportunities. Villa 7 remained my personal sanctuary, a symbol not of family tradition but of my new beginning. I found I enjoyed spending time there alone, watching the same sunsets I had seen as a child, but experiencing them through new eyes. The most unexpected development came 3 months after the acquisition, when I met Emma Lawrence, a guest who had booked a 2-week stay to finish writing her novel. We met at a mixer I hosted for guests, and unlike most people who recognized my name from tech industry news, she had no idea who I was beyond being the resort owner. I just needed somewhere peaceful to write, she told me over dinner on our first date. Though I have to say, finding out the charming guy who recommended the key lime pie owns the whole place was quite a plot twist. With Emma, I found something I had never experienced in my family relationships. Unconditional acceptance. She was interested in my work because I was interested in it, not because it conformed to some predetermined measure of success. She listened to my stories with genuine curiosity, rather than looking for evidence that I had finally become worthy of approval. 6 months after purchasing Sunset Palms, I sat on the beach at sunset, watching the sky paint itself in impossible colors, just as it had during my childhood. Emma was flying in the next day for a long weekend. Samantha had begun bringing her husband and children for monthly visits that were slowly rebuilding our connection, and even my parents had tentatively scheduled a stay for their anniversary, though in Villa 14, not attempting to reclaim their old territory. The pain of that text message exclusion had not disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something unexpected. Gratitude. If I had not been banned from the family villa, I might never have purchased the resort. I might have continued seeking validation from people constitutionally unable to give it. I might never have created this new life on my own terms. Sometimes the doors that close lead us to open ones we never would have found otherwise. Sometimes being excluded from where you thought you belonged forces you to create your own belonging, your own home, your own family of choice rather than birth. As the last light faded from the sky, I realized that true growth comes not from proving others wrong, but from no longer needing their approval to know your own worth. The greatest revenge is not success itself, but the freedom that comes with no longer measuring that success by someone else's standards. What do you think? Have you ever experienced being excluded from something important to you, only to find it led to something better? Share your story in the comments below. I would love to hear how you turned painful exclusion into positive change. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that rejection sometimes leads to redirection. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, sometimes the best family traditions are the new ones you create yourself.